Hello, everyone. I'm Miss Thais, and I have another story for us to read. So we're going to be reading Bill Pickett, Rodeo-Ridin Cowboy, and it was written by Andrea D. Pinkney and illustrated by Brian Pinkney. All right, here we go. Long before Bill Pickett was born, a wagon train traveled west, all the way from South Carolina. It was 1854. Eager Americans were packing up their belongings and wheeling out to the Great Plains. Some of these pioneers were white folks looking for a new life in the new land. The rest were Black, enslaved people forced to follow their masters. The men, women, and children loaded everything they owned into those covered wagons. Crock sacks, homespun duds, and bedclothes bundled tight. To pass the time on the slow, steady trek, the Southerners sang traveling songs. Westward ho, where the getting's good, on the land of opportunity. Westward ho, gonna stake my claim, onto Texas, the Lone Star State. During this long journey, a baby boy was born. His name was Thomas Jefferson Pickett. He was a free-spirited youngin', but he wasn't free. Born into slavery, he had to wake when his master said wake, work when his master said work, sleep when his master said sleep. On the Texas plains, Texas grew up learning to brand cattle and swing a lariat. He and his family worked for the white folks, helping them tame the parched soil into prospering feed crops. Then the Civil War ravaged the United States. And when the war ended, all enslaved people were declared free as the blue bonnet blossoms that cover the Texas prairie. Thomas married a woman named Mary Virginia Elizabeth Gilbert. They settled with other freed slaves at Jenkins Branch, a small community just north of Austin, Texas. Heaven blessed Thomas and Mary with 13 children. Their second born child was Willie M. Pickett, but folks called him Bill, a youngin' who took after his father. Bill was the feistiest boy south of Abilene. He was quick as a jackrabbit, more wide-eyed than a hooty owl, and curious. Bill's parents now owned a small plot of land where they raised chickens and pigs and grew sweet corn, tomatoes, and collards. They sold the vegetables and fruits in town to earn their living. Bill's brothers and sisters helped tend the crops, but Bill was always wandering off. Most days he straddled the rickety corral gate to watch cattle drives tramp along the Chisholm Trail, a gritty stretch of road that snaked from the Rio Grande to the heart of Kansas. Bill watched as the cowboys drove thousands of ornery longhorn steers past his parents' farm to stockyards in Kansas. Each trail crew had a trail boss, a cook, and a slew of cowboys. Bill always offered them a friendly "how do." Some cowboys tipped their hats to signal hello, but they hardly ever stopped. And behind them, they left hoof-beaten dirt and the smell of adventure. In the evenings, after the last batch of corn pone had been eaten, Bill and his family would gather around the stove fire for a night of story swapping. Bill had two cousins, Anderson Pickett and Jerry Barton, who were trail driving horsemen. When they came to visit, they bragged about rope steering, breaking ponies, and protecting their trail crews against buffalo stampedes. Bill and his family loved to learn their campfire songs about nights on the trail, when Anderson and Jerry slept under the black western sky with nobody watching them but the stars. All these songs and stories sparked Bill's imagination. They made him more up-jumpy than ever. He would lie in his bed and dream of the day when he would be old enough to rope mossback cattle and help stray doggies keep up with the herd. One afternoon, Bill was straddling the gate as usual when he spotted an eye-popping sight. A bulldog was holding a restless cow's lower lip with its fangs. Bill moved closer to get a good look at how the dog's bite kept the squirming cow down. Soon, Bill got to wondering, if a small bulldog can hold a big-lipped cow, why can't I do the same? Days later, on his way to school, Bill passed a band of cowboys from the Littlefield Cattle Company. The men were having a hard time branding their calves. "Want some help?" Bill called to them. The cowboys looked at the brazen boy and went back to their work. "I can hold one of them calves by the lip with my teeth, just like a bulldog," Bill went on. "I can do it sure as my name's Bill Pickett." The cowboys turned out a rip-roaring laugh, but one of them put forth a challenge. Let the boy go ahead and try it, if he dares. The men roped the calf and threw it to the ground. Bill put his face down and sunk his teeth into the animal's lip. Then Bill held the calf firm while the cowboys pressed a hot branding iron into its side. Bulldogging, done by the youngin', the cowboys cheered. Invented there and then by feisty Bill Pickett, that was bulldogging, bite 'em style. When he was no more than 15 and still itching for adventure, Bill set out to find his own way. Like many young'uns who came from large families, Bill had to go out and earn a living to help make ends meet. Bill found work as a cowhand on ranches all over Texas. He spent long days saddling horses and mucking out their stalls. During the winter, it was Bill's job to watch for wolves that crept up to the hen houses. Bill learned to lasso and ride like the cowboys he'd seen pass by on the Chisholm Trail. He practiced bulldogging by catching steers that charged off into the mesquite brush. Soon Bill could tame broncs better than almost any other ranch hand. And every now and then, when work was slow, Bill went to his mama and daddy's farm. Each time he had new stories of his own to tell his family. Word of Bill's fearless riding spread from ranch to ranch. On Sundays, folks gathered at local barnyards to watch Bill snatch a fire-eyed steer by the horns. Men, women, and youngins rode on horseback and in their buggies to admire Bill's skill. They dropped coins in his hat to show how much they liked his horsemanship. One morning, while he was working at a ranch in Taylor, Texas, Bill heard the Wilson County Livestock Association had brought a fair to town. The fair included a full-scale rodeo. Men from the association had parked their wagons on a hill a few miles south of Taylor. Their rodeo was going to be a big event. Bill was determined to compete. For the first time, Bill performed his bulldogging stunt before a large rodeo crowd. As the steer thundered into the arena, Bill jumped from the back of his horse and grabbed it by its horns. Then, before the beast knew what was coming, Bill dug his teeth into the animal's tender upper lip. He raised his hands in victory as the grisly critter went down without a fight. Somebody let out a holler, "Hoy, hoy!" All the folks watching the rodeo clapped and stomped. He throwed that beast but good. That cowboy's brave clear down to his gizzards. Hot diggity dewlap. After that, Bill bulldogged at rodeos throughout the West. When he wasn't bulldogging for show, he still worked on ranches to make ends meet. But stories about Bill's rodeo riding kept on keeping on. From Texas to Arkansas to Oklahoma to Kansas to Colorado and on up through the hills of Wyoming. Now everybody wanted to see Bill perform his special bulldogging feat. Two years later, in 1890, Bill married Maggie Turner. Bill and Maggie made Taylor, Texas their home, and together they birthed 2 boys and 7 girls. Sometimes Maggie and the youngins came to watch Bill perform when he bulldogged at rodeos near their small farm. They cheered the loudest of all. Finally, Bill decided to trade ranch work for rodeo. At first, it wasn't easy. He had to leave Maggie and his children for weeks at a time, and some rodeos turned Bill away. Many rodeo owners believed Black cowboys should ride with their own kind. But the newspapers didn't seem to care if Bill was Black or white. Bill's bulldogging was news. The Wyoming Tribune and the Denver Post printed stories about the wild riding South Texas brush hopper who could tackle a steer with his bare hands and his bite. Slowly, Bill began to earn his living as a bulldogger. Whenever Bill came home after time on the road, he would sit his family down and let loose his tales of the rodeo. He told Maggie and their children how everywhere he went, folks called him the Dusky Demon on account of the dusty dirt cloud that billowed behind him whenever he performed his fearless riding. All his youngins listened close, the same way their daddy had done to his cousin's story when he was a boy. In 1905, when Bill was performing in the Texas Fort Worth Fat Stock Show, he was taken by surprise. After the rodeo, a fine-talking man named Zach Miller approached Bill and shook his hand. Zach Miller and his brothers, Joe and George, owned one of the biggest ranches in the West. Their 101 ranch spread over 3 towns, White Eagle, Red Rock, and Bliss in Oklahoma. The Miller brothers also owned a traveling Wild West show, a spectacle greater than the small-time rodeos where Bill usually performed. The 101 Ranch Wild West show had 90 cowboys and cowgirls, 300 animals, and 16 acts. The Miller show was famous, but to make it the best, they had to have a cowboy who could draw crowds and keep folks yip-yapping for more. The Millers had heard about Bill Pickett. After seeing Bill perform that day, Zach knew Bill was just the cowboy they needed. He asked Bill to join the 101 Ranch Wild West show. He even told Bill that Maggie and their children would be welcome to live at the 101 Ranch while Bill traveled. Bill didn't have to think twice. Zach's offer was the best he'd ever gotten. It wasn't long before Bill and his show horse, Spradley, became the 101 Stars attraction. Soon, Bill began to take his bulldog into the far corners of the world. Crowds stood up and cheered when Bill bulldogged at Madison Square Garden in New York City. In Mexico City, townspeople filled the stands at El Toro, the national bull ring, to watch the dusky demon face a fighting bull that was meaner than 10 bulls in one. Bill bulldogged in Canada and in South America too. And in 1914, he performed in England for King George and Queen Mary. Bill's Bulldog act helped turn the 101 Ranch Wild West show into a high-flaunting wonder. Even more important, Bill helped make rodeo one of the best-loved sports of his time. After years of bulldogging with the 101 show, Bill decided to give traveling a rest. He wanted to spend more time with Maggie and their children. So he returned to the 101 Ranch, where he lived and worked as a cowhand. To keep his skills strong, he bulldogged in rodeos closer to home. Bulldogging lived on long after Bill died in 1932, but nobody could catch a steer the way Bill did. When Bill's children were grown, they gathered up their own youngins and told them about their grandfather, Bill Pickett, the feisty cowboy child from south of Abilene who grew up to be the dusky demon. The end. I hope everyone enjoyed that story, and I'll see you next time. Bye.